Hello, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well out there. Got quite a few movies to talk about in this video. Got quite a variety of films, I would say. The first one I'm going to talk about is Decision to Leave, which is the new film from director Park Chan-wook. Of course, who did Old Boy and Thirst and a bunch of other very well-received movies like the Vengeance Trilogy and The Handmaiden. I thought Decision to Leave was very good. Maybe not quite on the level of his top films. But that might just be it's doesn't have some of the crazy plot twists that his other films have, and it's got good cinematography, but the shots don't call attention to themselves as much for the most part, at least. Compared to some of his other films, it's not as overtly stylish as stuff like Old Boy, but it does have some beautiful environments and some great cinematography. But yeah, it's just a little bit more maybe mainstream. Not sure if that's the right word, but more subdued and subtle than a lot of his other films and less flashy. So it may actually appeal more to some who think of his other movies as being overindulgent. And I would say it's definitely less violent and disturbing than some of his other films. But yeah, like I said, very well made, great acting, well written. As many people have pointed out, it kind of feels like a play on or a homage to Hitchcock movies or just thrillers in general. But yeah, this movie it didn't leave a huge impression on me. But maybe with a rewatch that might change a little bit. It's just a very intricate and detailed film. And yeah, nothing stood out to me as like a big flaw or anything. So no complaints. I would recommend this to most people who like international cinema and, of course, fans of the director. I could see this getting nominated for the Best International Film Oscar. I'm almost positive this was submitted by South Korea. But I don't know about it winning the international film category or getting nominations in other categories. Obviously, these past few years, we've been seeing a lot more foreign films get nominations in other categories, but I don't know if this is the kind of film that would really appeal to the Academy that much. Moving on, we have Triangle of Sadness, which is from director Ruben Östlund. His previous film was The Square, which I loved, and that won the Palme d'Or and at Cannes, and so did this. So Östlund's got 2 Palme d'Ors now. I think only like 3 other directors have ever done that, so that's pretty rare. Triangle of Sadness, it's very similar tonally and structurally to the Square, I think. So I think if you like that movie, you'll like this. Whereas maybe if you didn't like that movie, I'm not sure that this is gonna appeal to you. But I really like this a lot. I mean, maybe I like The Square a little bit more, but it's basically on that level. It's similar in being a very biting satire that is just not subtle at all. And again, that kind of depends on your feelings. I don't mind unsubtle satire when it's done right, but obviously a lot of people might mind that. Might just be kind of annoyed or off-put by that. But and I thought this had a very interesting ambiguous ending, which I won't spoil. But yeah, I would recommend this. Maybe not for everyone, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. Moving on to another film, not in the English language, we have Petite Maman, which is on Hulu in the United States. I don't know about other countries or anything like that where it's available, but this is from director Celine Sciamma, who their most recent film was Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which I really liked. And she also wrote, or was one of the screenwriters on the animated film My Life as a Courgette. She made some other films as well, but those are the only ones I've seen from her. This is a very short film at only 72 minutes. It's similar in some ways to Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Like stylistically and tonally, it has similar vibes. They're both understated films with little music, similar pacing. but not similar content-wise. Obviously, Portrait of a Lady on Fire was a period piece, and this is a contemporary setting, and that was Portrait was a romantic film. This isn't everything like that. It's a PG rated, more wholesome type of film. For me, this was not as memorable as Portrait, but still very good. Maybe it just didn't have the overtly beautiful imagery that Portrait did. So it's just not as stylish, perhaps. But it's about an 8-year-old girl dealing with the death of her grandmother, with a bit of a fantastical twist that I don't know if it's really a spoiler, but I'll just let you figure that out on your own if you want. But despite the topic, it's really not depressing at all, I thought. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. It's more of a hopeful film. And it manages to be poignant without being melodramatic, which is always a tough line to walk. So no complaints or big flaws on this one. Now we're going to move on to a film I definitely liked a lot less than those first three, and that is Andrew Dominik's Blonde, the Marilyn Monroe biopic based on the Joyce Carol Oates novel. And yeah, I liked Dominik's previous films, Killing Them Softly and The Assassination of Jesse James are both great films. So I was excited for this, but man, yeah, this was overall quite bad. There were a few small positive aspects I liked, but overall, it's just a mind-bogglingly bad movie in a lot of ways. Maybe, they could have edited it down to like a 2-hour good movie. Because I think, man, runtime was like almost 3 hours or something like that. And yeah, it's just tonally a very weird movie. There are many points where I was just like, what is going on? Why is this chosen? Yeah, just lots of on-the-nose dialogue. I did like some of the performances. I did like some of the visual experimentation. It's an interesting choice to use both black and white and color and multiple aspect ratios, but I don't know. I couldn't really tell if there was any sort of rhyme or reason to it. But yeah, I don't really know what the purpose to that was. And I'm generally not a fan of filmmakers changing history so much, because this really just totally changed things, and I think that's part of being based on a novel. And I try to go in with an open mind, even though it changed history so much, but it just wasn't worth it for this movie. Like, yeah, maybe if it was a great film, then it would be okay to change all the historical events, but yeah, a slight spoiler here. I think I started to realize this was a bad movie when Marilyn Monroe's fetus started talking to her. I think that was when I started realizing that this was just a mind-boggling movie. So yeah, definitely not recommended at all. Not bad in an interesting enough way, even. So yeah, moving on. I got a couple of horror movies I'll talk about. The first was X, which is an A24 horror. Which is pretty good. I didn't love it. I didn't like it as much as a lot of the other A24 horror movies out there. Nothing bad about it. It just didn't do enough to stand out that much. But I will say Mia Goth's performance as the lead was the standout part of the film, and all the supporting actors were solid as well. It just didn't, it's maybe a good solid 7 or 8 out of 10. Nothing amazing. I preferred another horror movie that just came out, which I saw in theaters, called Barbarian, which I thought was overall very good. And I only have a few minor nitpicks of things being a little cheesy, but nothing that bothered me a lot. Very glad I knew nothing going in. I didn't even watch the trailer, and it made the first act of the film very tense. And man, the filmmakers did such a great job making that part tense. But it's hard to talk about too much without spoilers, so I won't go into the plot or anything. But the film, plays with your expectations, and it had some interesting visual experimentation, like aspect ratio shifts and extreme lens choices and stuff like that, and some interesting exploration of gender roles and stuff. So I'd recommend that movie. And I also watched the film Pig, which came out in 2021, so I was a little behind on that, but starring Nicolas Cage, who who was fantastic in this film. It's from a director named Michael Sarnowski, who I'd never heard of before, but this is a very good film. I wasn't sure exactly what to expect going in. It was at least slightly different than what I was expecting. I'm not sure why I thought this, but I thought maybe it was going to be some sort of violent revenge film. I don't know. Maybe it was just like the poster or something like that, or just sharing the description, but that's not what it is at all. It's a bit of an odd film. It's not super weird or anything, but and it takes its time, kind of. It's not a very fast-paced film, but it's never boring, and it's not long at only 92 minutes. So I unreservedly recommend this to everyone. Then I'm going to talk about an Indian movie named RRR, which a lot of people, maybe about, I can't remember, about 6 months or so ago, like, it seemed like everybody on film Twitter was just like raving about this movie, and I finally got around to watching this, and I definitely enjoyed it a lot. I mean, it's over the top and so ridiculous, but in a fun, enjoyable way. It was just a lot of fun throughout, and I was rarely, if ever, bored throughout this. It's lots of odd, quirky, stylistic choices, not necessarily in a bad way or anything, but just lots of slow motion and kind of weird edits and stuff like that. Of course, since it's an Indian movie, it has to have, the dance musical scenes that come out of nowhere, and the first big dance scene, or really I guess like the only big dance scene in the movie proper, was just absolutely amazing. I feel like it came like an hour into the movie, and I just wish there was more of that kind of stuff in the movie. Obviously there's the big dance scene at the end, but I loved how the dance scene was put together and shot, and just, it didn't have a bunch of quick edits like you see in a lot of movies now. It kind of felt more old school, classic Hollywood, where it really let the dance moves play out and stuff like that. So yeah, that dance scene was my favorite part, but it also had some great action scenes, of course, all shot very clearly. Great characters as well. The main two actors were very charismatic. I will say, there's a lot of CGI in this film. A lot of it's the animals they don't use any real animals. They're all completely CGI. And, it's not on the level of a Hollywood film. It's not quite as good, but I personally didn't mind that much since it was such a kind of a heightened reality type of movie, over the top. And, knowing that it's not an American film, I tend to give it a little bit more leeway because I know they don't necessarily have the budget, although I assume this was a pretty high budget film. But yeah, I also loved the cartoonishly over the top British colonialists, and lots of things in general were just very on the nose like that, but it just wasn't trying to be subtle at all. It's also 3 hours long, and it definitely feels like it. A ton of stuff happens in this movie, but it's still fast paced. So I will say this movie in the United States is on Netflix if you want to check it out. I definitely recommend it. Moving on, we've got a few more things. Talk about Nope, the most recent Jordan Peele film, director of Get Out and Us. I thought this was good. I'm honestly not sure how I feel about it completely. Might want to rewatch it at some point, but there's just lots of very odd choices in there. Or things that they didn't seem to go anywhere or have a real purpose. There's some scenes that I thought, oh, we'll get an explanation for that later in the movie, and we never did. Not in a bad way, necessarily. It's just something I noticed. They definitely did a very good job at making certain parts quite unsettling and disturbing. I really liked Peele's twist on the alien, which I won't, go into detail on because it's a pretty big spoiler, but I really personally can't think of any other TV show or movie that used this specific kind of twist on aliens. Jordan Peele's direction here is great. It feels kind of Spielbergy in parts. And I would say, compared to his other films, there's less overt social commentary, I think. I mean, there's definitely some in there, but it's not as obvious, I don't think. Also, great cinematography here from Hoyt van Hoytema. It's definitely a very good-looking film. And then one last movie I want to discuss, and that's a little bit of an older one. That's 2019, called Lux Aeterna, from Gaspar Noé, who directed Irreversible and Enter the Void and Climax. I am definitely a Noé fan. I especially loved Climax. That was my favorite from him. This one, it was shot apparently only 5 days, and it's a much shorter. It's not really for a feature length. It's about like 50 minutes. Got Charlotte Gainsbourg in it. And, it feels very typical of Noé stuff. It's got the long takes of conversations, and a lot of times they're in split screen, and then it'll sometimes be broken up with these blocks of text that are quotes from famous directors. And so, these are kind of all Noé trademarks. And then the second half is where it gets crazy, and it just has this intense, colorful strobing for like 25 minutes straight, which is really cool. I can't even imagine what it would have been like seeing in theater. But, it's probably not up there with my favorites from Noé, but I didn't have super high expectations going in, since I knew it was just like a below 60-minute experiment, and I didn't really hear any discussion on this. I mean, I heard way more people talking about Into the Void or Climax, so that kind of made my expectations kind of low. So, it's probably not going to convert anyone who doesn't already like Noé, because like I said, it's very typical of his films. But if you're a fan of his, I would definitely recommend checking it out. I will say that this is much less violent and disturbing than Noé's usual films. There's no violence in it. There's maybe a couple minor parts that are a little disturbing. And then obviously the strobing might disturb you, and if you're epileptic, stay away from it. But other than that, I thought it was a pretty crazy movie. And then that's all for the movies. I'm just going to quickly talk about TV show, the Amazon Prime Rings of Power, based on the Lord of the Rings series. And, for some context here, I'm not a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I mean, I read the books and when I was younger, and, I like the Lord of the Rings movies, the Peter Jackson movies, but that's about it. So, I'm not like a hardcore Tolkien fan or anything, but man, this was just a very, very, very mediocre show. Main problem was just the writing, but the visuals were also often not that great, and that's the thing I think is somewhat just inexcusable for such an expensive show, and a lot of it was just too much CGI. And yeah, if this wasn't a Lord of the Rings show, I would have stopped watching it. If it was just like a generic fantasy show, it's just boring in a lot of parts. I mainly only cared about the plotline with Elrond and the dwarves. I really didn't care about all the new made-up characters, like the characters that didn't come from Tolkien, like Arondir the elf and the woman that he had a love interest with that I can't remember her name. And they try to do some like plot twists in this that get revealed in the last episode, and I guess I won't spoil it just in case you haven't watched it yet or whatever and planning to, but I guess if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. The plot twists were all just incredibly obvious, and just not that good of a show. So I definitely don't recommend checking that out if we're on the fence of it somehow. So that's that'll be it for this video. I'll just give a quick update on the other videos I'm working on. Honestly, I've got so many videos that are just kind of on the back burner that I am not fully focusing on, but still plan on getting out there eventually. But the main one I'm focusing on is a video on Soviet animated cinema in general, and there's just so much there. I had no idea how much there was going to be there. So it's been quite a while for me doing all the research on that one, but I think that should be an interesting topic. I'm also slowly working on a video on the experimental films of the 1970s, which, I did the 60s one, and I thought that was a pretty interesting topic. So I'm going to keep working on that. But again, there's just so much out there for those. The experimental film world just blew up in the 60s and 70s and expanded so much. So, and I'm also thinking about doing a video on the weirdest movies of the 80s, which a long, long time ago I did a video on the weirdest movies of the 70s, and that's a topic I'm interested in too. So hopefully that'll appear somewhat in the near future. But yep, I think that will be it. So thanks everyone for watching.